This podcast is supported by VPLA, Victorian Planning Environmental Law Association. Welcome to the Planning Exchange, where we interview built environment professionals who are doing interesting work beyond the ordinary. I'm Jess Noonan, and I'm joined by my colleague, Peter Jewell.
What if everything we throw away isn't actually waste, but an untapped resource? Globally, we generate over 2 billion tonnes of waste each year. And here in Australia alone, that number is about 75 million tonnes annually, or nearly 3 tonnes per person. For cities, that's not just an environmental issue, it's an urban planning challenge, shaping how we design, service, and future-proof our communities. From cutting-edge technology to smarter recovery systems, the way we manage waste is changing rapidly. Today, we're joined by Maree Marshall from Urbis, an expert in waste and resource recovery, to explore how innovation is reshaping the sector and what the future could look like. It's a conversation that will challenge assumptions and offer fresh perspectives on something we all take for granted. Welcome to the show, Maree. Can you please provide an overview of your experience, your background, and how you became a waste engineer?
I started my journey a long time ago as a young civil engineer. 40 odd years ago, there was no environmental engineering degrees. So I did a mainstream degree, but one of my first managers said to me, "Maree, you're too green to be an engineer." I thought he meant naive. He meant too sustainable. So during my early years, I pondered through construction and precious metals, and it wasn't until I landed a job coming back from overseas in local government and somebody said to me, "Collecting rubbish in tubs isn't safe. We need to roll out a new system." So it was one of the first councils to roll out what was back then the two-bin system, and I discovered waste. I discovered that I could make a difference, a green difference. So now I've been in it over 25 years. I love what I do. I like making a difference. I like changing and having a true impact on the way people live their lives. That's how I got into waste.
Complete. What is a typical day for you like?
I spend a fair bit of my time in the design space. It's probably about 70% of my day. I spend probably another 20% giving advice to councils, advice to the state government. Sometimes it's federal, but it's usually those who are trying to deliver the service and are particularly challenged. On the design front, it's advice to designers to do better. No cookie cutter.
So we can blame you for Sorry, Jess. What was this?
Would you be able to set the scene in terms of what the status quo is in Australia with waste at the moment?
The federal government set a national policy, the states endorsed it. And I don't have a problem with the national policy. Where it starts to break down is that the people who deliver the service to homes are councils. And they do not have the talent or the staff or the funds to fix what's already built. They can't change the built environment. They don't own the built environment. We do. The public, companies, developers own the built environment. So the buildings that are built, it's very hard to retrofit when there's no money on the table to come and change what we currently have as far as the technology in those buildings. It's much easier to change commercial and industrial sectors and the construction demolition sector, where there's more control by the people working in those spaces. So the construction demolition industry, they're way ahead of the curve. They avoid 80 to 90%, if not higher, of their waste going to landfill. The municipal solid waste, the waste that we generate at home, the waste that councils have to manage, it's really difficult for them to go back, and it's all right if you're a single home, we can just give you more bins, right? But then we're driving past the door, more carbon. But anything that's 2 or 3 stories, 4 and above, which is all of our capital cities, it's near impossible to go back and retrofit. So they've been told to meet a mandate that they cannot fix. That's where this advice space really comes to play. So I'll give you a simple example. We've got a lot of buildings that might have 1 chute. Not 2, but 1. So we need to change the thinking. maybe the one chute should be garbage on a Monday and recycling on a Wednesday. Now it operates as two. We need to think different, not say you need to go back and put in 2 chutes. Does that make sense? So we can't physically change all of those towers, but we can change the way we use them.
Maree, you said there's a disconnect between what the federal mandates are and what is happening on the ground. Doesn't that suggest that there's a problem with the mandates? If they're not based on the practical realities of what's out there? Isn't that the top-down approach doesn't reflect the practicalities and realities? I would have thought that's the issue.
And that's normal, right? Local government is always the first point of contact with the community, right? That's why you work in it. And the state is one level removed and the federal is a level above that. So I don't necessarily have a problem with that thinking that food should not be in landfill. What should have happened was much more research and understanding of where is the food generated. Is it the industrial food waste? Because that's easier to fix. And they're right on top of it. And that's where I'll come back. That's where circular economy can really have a difference. But at the household level, we don't all have the ability to have a backyard where we could do the ultimate solution, which is to have something like, here we go, chooks. Chooks eat the food waste and they produce a product from it. But how many people have the luxury of that? Not many. But the regional communities do. So what do we do with food in a residential setting? It's easier to roll out this food bin, the FOGO bin, but I can tell you it smells. If you put raw meat in a bin and expect it to sit there for a week or two, it will really smell. And so we've had councils who've suggested we should eat less meat, right? I'm sorry, I'm a meat eater. But there are better ways. You could do what the Queenslanders do with their seafood waste. They freeze it and they put it out the night before. But that means us as residents have to make a commitment and a commitment to want to change. So I don't necessarily believe the policy was wrong. We should not put good value items in the ground, and food is a good value item. Food could become pet food source. Food can become energy. So I think it's partly just handing down a mandate and expecting councils to come to play when they may not have the budget or there's not a one size fits all. So there's 2 sides to this discussion, and the solution that will apply is therefore different.
And I guess more broadly from a national perspective, is there a waste plan for Australia that all states and councils should be broadly working towards, or is it really down to each individual council to determine?
We've actually had an Australian standard for bin colours for a very long time, and no one followed it, right? It was there. It told us, and we use it in the medical industry. So hospitals, they've got this down pat. Which colour bin? Because it's a safety requirement. Unfortunately, the person who chose purple for the bin colour for Victoria didn't understand that is a medical waste stream that's highly toxic, and that colour should never have been picked. Neither should have orange, by the way. So somebody didn't read the Australian standards prior to picking that colour and then rolling out hundreds of thousands of these bins that are the wrong colour, right? There is actually good documents in place that should have been followed. Don't want to change the Australian standards because somebody in Victoria made a decision.
We thank Victorian Planning Reports, our very first supporter. If you want the A to Z of planning decisions in Victoria and excellent editorials, please get yourself a subscription to the VPRs. Details on our website.
I need to ask now, what are your opinions on the glass bins?
I don't believe the volume is there. The Victorian government decided that we should have 4-bin system in Victoria. The rest of Australia typically has 3. So the typical one is garbage or general waste or residual waste. That's the stuff that goes to landfill or is incinerated depending on where you live. Number 2 is the recycling bin, which is what we call a commingled recycling bin. It's typical paper, plastic, cardboard, aluminium cans. They all go together. And we have pretty high quality sorting facilities in Australia, right across Australia, that can separate them back out. milk cartons, dog food cans, so steel, aluminium. So that's fine. And that third bin, which typically has a green lid, has garden waste in it and food waste in it. So it used to be called garden organics, GO, and food organics, FO. They joined those two words together, so most people would know it as a FOGO bin. The bin was pretty clean, low contamination when it just had garden waste in it, because we understood happened in the backyard goes in the green one. When we started adding food, that bin started to become very contaminated, and people were starting to get very confused about the whole idea of what's a compostable bag. What's a biodegradable bag? That's just a plastic bag that breaks down into little pieces of plastic, right? So we have to be very careful what message and how we explain what should go in that bin. If you can't eat it or it didn't come out of your garden, it shouldn't be in that bin.
And then you've got the added confusion, I think, that some councils require you to put your composting, or sorry, your food scraps, I should say, into a little bag that they provide, and then other councils don't have that. So I've completely
Correct. And if you roll out a service, you give someone a nice green bin with a green lid to put your food waste in and your garden waste in, and the first time you get it, you get a nice roll of biodegradable or compostable bags. Be very careful, folks. And now you take that away and you say, I'll go buy your own refills. And you get to the supermarket and there's the $14 roll and the $2 roll. One's compostable and one's biodegradable. Which one's everyone going to pick? Now we're going to have small shards of plastic right through our composting system, which completely degraded the product. So don't roll out a service you cannot commit to long term, or ban the bag. Don't use it.
Glass, should we have a fourth bin?
Personally, I don't believe the glass bin. I thought there's two things. One, it should not have been rolled out before Victoria started the container deposit scheme and caught up with New South Wales, Queensland, South Australia, Western Australia. They rolled it out in the wrong order. What we saw was people understand the 10 cents and people make an effort for money. So I can even tell you that my 20-year-old uni student, when he goes to the supermarket and he's looking at his Pepsi or his protein shake, he prices in the 10 cents to the value per litre of the item because he's getting it back and now that's going to become petrol. So people count the 10 cents when they're shopping. Unfortunately, we get bin diving, which is when people dive into other people's bins when they've put them out to grab the 10 cents. It means people will change their shopping behaviour to buy the item with the 10 cents. If you get 10 cents off 50 mils or 100 mils, which one do you want? You want it off the smaller container. So people actually changed. All that's left behind in my house is wine bottles and passata jars. Right? So I don't need another bin just for those. I would rather take it to my local park or my local transfer station and drop it off if they don't want it in the yellow bin. There's a little bit of thinking about whether it contaminates the cardboard. When you squash it in the truck, it breaks the glass. It becomes impregnated in other valuable items, and that valuable item is cardboard. So you're dropping the value of the cardboard because it's now got glass shards in it. Should that have meant that we rolled out a cardboard bin because it's a high value commodity, not glass? Did we get it right? I don't think so. That's my personal opinion. And I'd be more than happy to dive into the whole research on that rather than roll out a glass bin without showing people the study that was done behind it.
that also had a base allocation to it as well.
Nobody wants the fourth bin.
Area of unexpected consequences yet again, isn't it? From
Yep.
white water, how they behave.
Correct. About 6 months ago, the count was 50% of Victorian councils voted at a council meeting to object to the forced rollout of the glass bin. They're trialling lots of different other solutions which are actually working. That you walk it to your local pop-up park, your local park, where there's a community glass bin. There's not enough volume for every house to have another bin.
Moving on from finish. That's a no from you.
No,
Yeah, well,
definitely
yeah.
no.
That's three no's. I'm very skeptical of the whole recycling industry because I think, and not listeners, not long ago, Asian countries banned export from Australia of their recycled products because everyone was doing the right thing. And then we find out most of the recycling gets shipped to third world countries where the processing is not very good. A lot of it just ends up at landfill or anything. But how much honesty is there from governments to the public about the effectiveness and the cost of recycling?
First, I'll say the China ban was a good thing for Australia. It made us wake up that the yellow bin might be called the recycling bin, but if nobody wants a recycled product, what was the point? If the government tenders don't demand recycled content, if the Australian standards don't allow recycled content, what was the point of the bin in the first place? So the recycling industry is valid, but it's a long way down the circular economy list. Right? It's number 8, not number 1, number 2, number 3. So we became very reliant on, you stick it in the bin and something will happen to it. So were we a bit misled? Yes, right? Did we listen to reduce recycle too much? Yes. We should have been focusing on the reuse bin, right? Or don't generate it in the first place. And so when the government brought out the ban on shopping bags, we got a bit of a warning. Everyone got it. BYO the bag. It's not that hard, right? And then we put a price on the bag. So the ban the bag.
In terms of the energy use, plastic bags are incredibly efficient. And the alternative is those bags that people buy for shopping bags. They get dirty. People buy multiple ones. The plastic bags, super convenient and very low energy output. The replacement is the opposite. I'll just throw in there.
I come from a community that has boomerang bags. And so people make them from leftover fabrics. They make them from leftover clothing. They're hanging up at the supermarket. If you arrive and you forgot, you took a boomerang bag, you took it home, you brought it back, and someone else took it the next time. So there are really good low energy, because we reused something or we remanufactured something rather than using petroleum to make a plastic bag. I don't agree that the plastic bag that was then made heavier to comply with some rule because it's now a reusable plastic bag. No, I'm sorry. Everyone's still using it as a bin liner or putting it straight in the landfill. But we definitely were taught when we transitioned from the paper bag that the bottom always fell out of to the plastic bag that became very convenient. But we were all going home every week with, 10 or 15 shopping bags, or I could see some families that came out with 27 bags every week. No one ever thought to take them back. But if we lived in Europe 10 years earlier, we wouldn't have gone shopping without a bag. So we became lazy, and the same thing happened with our bins.
I don't know if there's enough analysis about this, and I'm not bagging all green ideas, no pun intended, but we have all these things. No one ever goes back and says, was that really a good idea in terms of when you do all the measuring and things like that? And I suspect that is one issue that we will revisit very soon. But sorry, Jess.
No, that's okay. And look, I think we're a little bit precious about owning our own bin and not sharing. If we lived in Europe, hardly anyone has their own bins. They're all shared. And so we're quite hung up in the planning scheme. That house now has to have, in Victoria, 4 bins in the garage. And that one's going to have, if you're in New South Wales, you've got your 3 bins. And the thought of sharing, how do we charge it on the rates notice? I'm sorry, I really don't care about how you charge it on the rates notice. What I care about is the fact that we have the ability to share this resource. And if you live in a tower, everything's shared anyway when it comes to waste. So why are we not applying that to some of these new waste streams, if somebody turned around and said, I want to pick something that's not already used, if I said textiles, that we're going to go back to having a textile bin at your house, no thanks. We're all really good at taking it to the op shop. The amount of volume of goods that is now donated or traded on marketplace or through op shops really should be considered in the waste stream. You might find that it's up closer to 20-25%. And if you're in a shopping mall in France or Spain, you will find there's an op shop in the shopping centre. I've never seen one here. Vinnies are in the strip shops, so's the Salvos. They're not in the big shopping malls, right? Because they're designed to sell product. They're designed for us to consume. So
very sorry though for the Vinnies, and there's one near me that is always just overflowing rubbish. It's appropriate to have donated, but people don't tend to actually think about, is there actually a value associated with this product or this item? Oh, I don't want it, I'm going to give it to Vinnie's. So no one is ever going to that ratty old T-shirt that's covered in stains.
Correct. Yep. And I believe mainstream media has an enormous opportunity to help the community understand, if you wouldn't wear it because it was worn out, nobody else is going to wear it. If you're not prepared to eat off it because it's got a chip, why would one eat somebody else? And when you donate something, be careful where you place it, because then it gets chipped and now it's waste anyway. So I totally agree with you. However, if it's good, valuable items that, I don't live in that climate anymore, or I've changed size, my children grew out of it, there's a massive opportunity for the next life of a lot of products, whether they be at home. Very sadly, when I was asked to transition the suburb of Docklands into the City of Melbourne's waste service, one of the first things the building managers said to me is, we're having trouble with the cleaners fishing the amount of clothing and linen out of the bin under the chute. He said, sometimes it comes down with tags on it. It's never been worn. And so I did a whole lot of work with the building managers, and we found out that people move into a new apartment and they either go, oh, I got too much stuff, or, I'm going to go the new look. And they get rid of an enormous volume of material. So in Docklands, I put a charity bin. I approached all the charities, and it was Vinnies who came to the party. We put a charity bin inside each of the towers. There was about 10 to 12 that we started with. We were collecting like a ton a week of good quality dropped off items. It was an eye-opener. And then when the bushfires happened, people packed a suitcase, brought it down, clean and folded, and left it with those bins ready. So it became the mandate for Victoria, and it's pretty much the mandate across Australia. If you have more than 50 apartments, you must have a charity bin. Towels, linen, doonas, puffer jackets. If you're returning to a climate or you're moving to a climate that's different, don't drop it down the chute. There are people who value the material. So that's when I meant I go home and I feel good about what I've changed. The charity bin is definitely a mark in the sand.
Yeah, absolutely. Bringing it back to a bit more of a planning lens and a planning conversation, I think it's safe to say that the value of waste and waste facilities is probably not considered to be a particularly sexy topic, and it's not one that we often talk about, particularly in these sorts of conversations. But it's really crucial, in my view, to strategic planning and ensuring that those facilities are accounted for when we are doing strategic planning processes. A lot of landfills and waste facilities have quite substantial amenity buffers. As we know, you can't have residential uses within some of those buffers for obvious reasons. What has your experience been in that space? Do you think it's well accounted for, or is it something we need to get better at?
If they're waste facilities that are actually going to process the waste, it's fair to say they're typically noisy. They're quite dirty environments. And depending on whether they receive any food waste, they can be odorous. So a typical plastics recycling where they separate plastic, cardboard, metal, when you visit them, they spill it on the floor, so noise occurs. When they batch up all the tin cans that have not been rinsed, they stink. They really do, especially if they've got a lot of dog food in them. And so they're valuable products, and we have really good equipment for sorting those streams, right? So they can be well designed and very efficient. What we have to be mindful of is that to get it there, we're driving very big trucks past everybody's house, and we are squashing the content inside that truck to make it worthwhile to transport it. You can't truck air. That's a waste of money. What happens is if we over squash it, we over compact it, we diminish the value. So there's a trade-off to be had. So the trucks that pick up that mixed recycling, they can't squash it anywhere as much as the truck that goes to landfill. We compact that a lot. So they need to be located in places that are still relatively close to the community, because we all expect that truck to go past multiple times a week. So
Transfer station.
no, that's either materials recovery facility where we sort it, or it could be a landfill, right? We have the ability to compact waste to much greater densities and move it on rail. The Thames is a green highway that transfers waste across London to get it out of different boroughs to a new location. Do we transport any waste across the bay? No. We truck it from southeast Melbourne to northwest. Some waste is being moved 70, 80 kilometres, and then they've got to get it into really big trucks, B-doubles, to make it valuable. So if we can put it on a train or a barge and we have less than 10 staff manning that, and it's got waste from 10 councils, it's a very different dynamic. So we do it an expensive way here when we stick it in trucks that get to transfer stations and then we try and compact it up and then long haul it. It's an expensive process. So we have opportunity to do some of it quite differently. It won't service everyone, but there is opportunity to think about, are we hauling it to the right place?
Would we ever be in a situation where those facilities are localised or more localised than what they currently are?
I think some of that, and I'm a really big believer of transfer stations. Every council should have what I would call a mini transfer station or a mini circular economy hub. There should be things that you can drop off within your postcode. And within that postcode, you should be able to drop off textiles or clothing, stuff that you can't wear, or curtains or torn towels, because fibre is good. We should be able to drop off e-waste. One, it should never, ever be in a truck. Any battery, especially embedded batteries that are in kids' toys, toothbrushes, hearing aids, any of those embedded batteries are super dangerous once they're in a truck. They cause fires. And if you Google how many fires, some councils get one a fortnight. And you've got a $600,000 or $700,000 truck potentially catching on fire. What do? They dump it on the road. They've got to get it out, make it safe. E-waste. But then there's things like there's a lot of precious metals in, or silver and in X-rays, right? And plastic. So there are things that we dispose of regularly that really should be easy to get rid of. Is it the department store's problem? Not necessarily. Are some of them willing to help? Yes, most definitely. They take e-waste. There are things like polystyrene that I really think should be phased out, right? It's a very difficult product to condense because you've got to melt it. If you try and squash it, you end up with fluff everywhere. But it has value for some food products. I would say it's probably the next one on the to-go list. And then we should be able to drop off two types of timber. When you've got broken chairs and stuff like that, if that wood's treated, it really shouldn't be burnt. It's got too many chemicals in it. So there's some woods that should be separated. To do all of that locally is important. What I'd like to see is when you drop off at that same facility, something like paint, right? Most paint tins are about 50% full. Most people overbuy. Why can't that paint be used? If there are people who are wanting to pick up, especially builder's white or cream, the basic colours, and you want to restore a chair or a table, why should you have to go and buy fresh paint when someone's throwing out a half a tin of paint? So the opportunity for people to come in and pick up a chair that they want to refurbish or make into something else and use the materials that someone else has discarded. And hey, why don't we have a tool library attached to it? So you can have quick access to the basic tools that you need. You repair it, you go home with the finished product. So not only did you save the item, but you saved materials and tools. So we call those mini circular economy hubs. So some of the precincts that we design have them built in and they've been adopted by council. We actually did a lot of work with Homes Vic about having one classroom, 5 by 5 metres in public housing areas where there's sewing machines, basic tools, so that you can repair. Right? It's really important that we enable people to do better and don't just assume we can chuck it in that yellow bin. Recycling is not the answer, right?
I think, though, that some of those skills are a bit of a lost art these days, or that's on us to continue that skill transfer as the population ages.
There is some loss, absolutely, but there's also a large portion of the under 30s who would love to have these skills or have access to that community space. It's not surprising that the majority of student housing providers like Scabe or Urbis, they have an art room or a repair room where they actually have these pieces of equipment so these young people can modify their clothing or repair their clothing or upcycle it.
That's good.
Yeah, most young people can't even change a car tyre. I think Jess is right. They're completely, I don't even know the time, not most young people. So the idea of them, and also you can't, I've been listening to this, it sounds lovely in theory. Most people can't fix anything and they just chuck it out.
Which is a really sad state,
Well,
that if people have the opportunity for skill,
a lot of
it's
people are
important.
lazy. It takes effort to learn skills. And a lot of people can easily pick up these skills. They've got their own rigid, they want to be able to do this.
And that's why we started with Homes Victoria, because some of the public and social housing where people actually wanted the ability to repair something was a really important part of either skills they had, a community they come from, or something that significantly saved money. So we didn't start with a tier 1 tower. We actually started with people who would really like to be involved in this space, and students was the next one. So is it mainstream? No. Is there the right place for it? Absolutely. Are there parts of the community that are greener and more willing to give this a go? Yes.
A lot of modern equipment you can't repair because of the way it's designed.
Yes. And
I was going to get back to this point. That waste being a big city issue and taking up big components of the city and big expensive. What about overseas? They do a lot of high temperature burning of carbon.
Yep.
Do you think there's an option for that in Australia and a lot of other Western countries? I know they do it in Japan. Thoughts on that?
My answer is yes, outright yes. So if we think about what the circular economy is trying to teach us, it says that we should try and reuse things, we should try and avoid things, we should try and remanufacture them. But before we bury it, we really should recover the remaining energy that remains in it. And so if we've tried modifying something, so take MDF. How much furniture is made of reconstituted timber that's full of glue? When you glue anything together, you cannot pull it apart. You could cut down that desktop or the partition into a smaller one, but at the end of the day, you cannot remove the glue from that product. So rather than bury MDF or man-made timbers, we should incinerate it at high temperature and at least get the value back out of it. And that goes on to say anything that's got a high glue component. So a lot of shoes, right? When you glue rubber to fabric, whether it be carpet, whether it be shoes, when you start gluing things together that are not intended to come apart, it's very hard to pull them apart and recycle the components.
Great. They're talking about landfill. Now, as Jess, I'm a big landfill champion. I think it's great. Now, Maria, you're not a big fan of landfill. Is that true?
No, I'm not.
Oh, right, next question. So,
So no, place, landfill, or resort.
what have you got against landfill? It's the most practical, cost-effective, and accessible way of getting rid of waste.
There is a lot of material that has previously been buried in landfill that should never have been there, right? So pre-1960s and 70s, there's a massive number of aluminium cans with zinc rings on them, the old pull rings. So for me, landfills, we should be mining for all the good stuff that's in them. Then we've got more holes to fill back in that were already contaminated, right? But building new landfills, even though they'll be lined and managed, but there is things that shouldn't be there. So organics shouldn't be in there. We've got lots of valuable uses for organics. We shouldn't be putting metals in there.
Rick, can I ask you about this organics? Organics rot down. And recycling food waste is incredibly expensive for what you're going to get out of it. Why not just let it rot, decay like food does in the wild? What's wrong with it?
Unfortunately, bury it, we produce more methane, right? And I don't agree with the bag because that's just adding more organic material to break down. So avoid the bag. I don't agree with the bag.
No, but can't you put pipes like there are on lots of tips collecting the methane?
But I'd rather we didn't produce it in the first place, right? We are too quick to buy and dispose than think about, did I need it? Or if I chose to buy it just because I'd like it, the garment that I'm no longer taking or the food that I no longer want, did I have to stick it in the bin or was there somebody else who would have liked it? So I have an issue with the fast pace about it. But I also, I believe our consumption is still high and unnecessarily high. And it has been stagnant for close on 20 years, right? It's the one thing we have not managed to decline. Part of it is going back to producer responsibility or product stewardship. It's exceptionally frustrating now that you can barely repair a phone, right? And there's been this investigations into the right to repair and that you void your warranty. So I have a massive issue with that industry, right?
There's also the time associated with going and buying the new aspect. I completely agree with you. I think there should be ability to replace those sorts of things far easier and far cheaper than what they are. But the issue is just your fridge breaks every 5 years or your washing machine breaks every 5 years. That's time and energy that's required by you to go and research a new one, go and buy it. There's other flow-on effects that come from that I have a massive issue with as well.
Call me old school. There's called a repair person who comes out, and sometimes they're pretty simple repairs.
It's still cheaper to buy a new one.
But unfortunately, not all of us can afford to buy better and buy less often. And we see it from anything from people who own a rental who put pretty basic fit out in it and keep upgrading it, and they don't ever intend to put a quality product in it. That is really frustrating. That's just adding to the turnover of these items. The turnover of white goods also varies by climate, right? The amount of hard rubbish you put out or hard waste or bulky waste you put out in Queensland far exceeds the volume in Victoria. When you live in a damp, humid environment and you've got fridges and freezers running much harder, they don't last as long, right? Mattresses, fridges, freezers, there's a product of climate involved in some of it.
Maria, I just want to go back to your glasses.
Yep.
The lesson you draw, more expensive to get your lenses redone than to buy new lenses. Couldn't we look at that at the flip side and just marvel at the efficiency of production and work out why it costs so much more to reuse? And that is because of the human labour associated with that. and the engineering associated with that. But don't we say this is economics at play, not whether it's good or bad, but that's just our system is so efficient that it can create a new pair of glasses much cheaper than it is to. I think we should celebrate the fact that it's more easier for you to get new glasses.
I find that a really interesting example for us to discuss because the glasses they're all custom lenses, right? My script, my position on my eye. So they're not really as mass produced as we would think. It's not going and buying a 2.0 from the chemist, which are mass produced, right? Our prescription glasses, lenses for that frame. So I find that example is probably not the best example of where production and productivity outweighs because it's a custom product, right? It's already a custom product. I would like to hand in my frames. You're going to have to grind the lenses and shape them anyway. I would like them read.
Jess, you wanted to ask a sensible question. That help me focusing. Sorry, Jess.
I wanted us to talk about some of the other alternative technologies that we are starting to see, things like waste to energy. Do you see that as being a viable part of our strategy moving forward, or is it a distraction?
I think it's viable. The different states have different priorities on this. Nobody is going to want it in their backyard. That is going to be our challenge because if we push it too far from our cities, we'll be paying a fortune and be generating an enormous amount of carbon through emissions of trying to get it there, right? That's when you would really need to start to think about where is it? Can I get it there efficiently? Can I get it there by rail or sea, right? So if we can do the whole system, then it's a different scenario. But at the moment, if it's within 5K of any residential home, people are really going to start, and they are. Victoria has, 11 or so approved sites? They're pro waste to energy. Queensland.
How many of those are constructed?
I think Maree's Vale, the one up, and the others, they're in various parts of the planning process. Queensland is pushing ahead at a rapid rate to build ARC at the Gold Coast. Queensland was accepting waste over their border from New South Wales for a very long time. So their landfills have filled with New South Wales waste. So they've run out of time, right? They probably need it in the next 5 years, and good luck if they get it in 10, right? It's a challenge. They've picked a site that's somewhat remote from the public. They've picked low value land. They still are going to need an approval, and they're still going to need to build a very expensive piece of infrastructure. This infrastructure is probably sitting at $700 million to $1 billion. It doesn't, you need more than one council's waste to build it, to fill it. You need probably 10, right? Southeast Melbourne, should they have one? My vote's yes, right? If 2/3 of us live down that way, that's the direction it should be, right? Why would you go and truck it all the way around to the other side because we've got space or more distant from homes in northwest central Victoria? That's not the answer. So for me, I'd rather not produce it in the first place. But with what's left, yes, it's the right answer in my opinion.
Just about following you, Jess, but the technology is waste.
And to understand, obviously, we're using a lot of technology, I would assume now, for the sorting aspect of waste. Obviously, sorting, manufacturing. There's a really big role for AI to be playing in the waste sector moving forward. So what are you seeing from the technology perspective? Is that something that is still going to progress? Is there more to do in that space? Is there more that we should be doing?
Technology is certainly part of the solution, but if we separate our waste streams at source, right? If we at home, you're going to hate this, if we all had access to communal 7 streams, more the Japanese solution, we would have cleaner product of more value. But we have taught Australians that we have curbside bins, we have 3 colours, we chuck it all in the yellow one and it gets sorted. We diminish the product value. So a really simple example is when we use the 10-cent system and we only have glass and aluminium basically, there's a little bit of Tetra Pak, but that glass has 10 times the value of the glass that's coming out of the yellow bin. It's the same glass. It's just that we chose to separate it at home. So that glass is worth about $150 to $200 a tonne. Glass coming out of a materials recovery facility is only worth about $15 a tonne.
Yeah, right.
Because we made an effort. So is better technology the only answer? No. Is the opportunity for people to keep the streams clean through mini transfer stations or mini communal drop-off points? I think we need a combination of solutions. The precious items, the ones worth more, cardboard, clean glass, fibres, yes. But I wouldn't advocate 7 bins in every house.
I think the solution, Jess, is more realistic government policy on all this about what is achieved, what's economic, and what's manageable with people's behaviour. But I would have thought that's the place to start. Better, more realistic policy, Maree. Or do you think I'm just too? Help me out here.
I'm an optimist, so I'm always keen people to at least be given the choice to have a go, right? Don't always think the worst in people's interest in doing the right thing. Some of us want to have at least the choice. Yes, there's still a lot of people who will go with, it's not worth my time, or I can't be bothered, or, yeah, that's all right. We're all different. We're all different. I expect that we're all different. We don't all adopt at the same rate, the same curve, right?
Jess, I haven't told Maree about your backyard incinerator that you use to get rid of all your waste. So
we can still remember the incinerator and the smoky leaves.
most of the throw to get ours going.
And
Now, Jess, shall we move on to culture corner? What do you think? What are you going to do? What are we going to do, Maree, about all this EV, all of this green solar panels, EV batteries out of cars, all the wind turbines, and stuff that can't be recycled? What are we going to do? That's all going to landfill, right? Solar panels?
oh, my God, have we created a monster? It's quite interesting that if you look at a map of, I'll start with Victoria and then we'll talk about a couple of the other states. Typically, the eastern side of Victoria, so take Melbourne and go east, the uptake of solar panels is enormous. And on the west side, so the Western District, it's all wind farms. If we're going to build a solar panel recycling or disassembly plant and refurbishment plant, we need to build it on the east where they're being used. Then we move up towards Queensland where the adoption of solar panels is even greater, right? And WA. The hot climates, they're running air cons, they put them in really fast. That tells me that Queensland and WA, we should be building solar panel disassembly so we can refurbish and upgrade. So let's have a second life for every one of those panels before we suddenly try and crush them and extract out the precious metals. So recycling second, because you're going to have to put a lot more energy into them. So can we refurbish? Or at least the new ones should definitely be designed to be upgraded or refurbished, right? Embedding things in glass is a challenge when we go to get it out again. We need to think carefully, where was the uptake? Therefore, where is the opportunity to create employment in Australia to manufacture or remanufacture or create new product from those materials? That's step one. Then we start with batteries, right? The cycle will continue, but we also have the opportunity, if we're thinking about things like inland rail, or we're thinking about future major infrastructure, where can we also attach the opportunity to create employment from waste in those same precincts? We have the opportunity to do this, right? But we should be taking that step back view now as to where is the infrastructure, where is the materials, and linking them together.
Good luck with
You want to come?
energy costs are too high to do that. Our labour costs are too high. We're just going to keep importing the stuff from China. Anyway, I'm an optimistic person too, and I'm also yeah, Jess, culture corner. Oh, yes. Now, culture corner, podcast extras. Something you've read, seen, watched, experienced that our listeners might enjoy. Doesn't have to be on topic. What about your glasses? Or we can ask. Sure.
We've been doing a few repairs within our house. So rather than replacing things, we're trying to repair a few bits and bobs here and there. Even restoring some of the old windows that are completely full of rot. It's a bit tricky. We've got a bunch of them on a second level that are going to require a lot of scaffolding, which is going to be a challenge. But anyway, that's my next job. Anyway, I'm nimble. It'll be fine.
Having renovated a house twice, I tuck pointed the front of my house.
Oh, did
I went safe and I learnt to tuck point and I redid the front of my house.
Oh, I might need some tips.
Took me a very long time. I have seen something interesting very recently. 2 young boys, let's say they were under 25, dared each other, and they filmed it for anyone who wants to go Google, to do the op shop challenge. And they went into an op shop and they had to dress each other. So they went and picked out clothing, and it was a real eye-opener. And I think that says another word for that in social media, about what these 2 young guys did with less than $100. Full outfit. And fortunately, it was my local one, and I've sent it to all my staff and said, check this out. What an advertisement for buying used, high-quality garments. I know quite a few students who buy at op shops just to make money. They sell it and sell it, right? There's nothing wrong with the pre-loved market. It's shopping when you don't need it at the pre-loved market that I have a challenge with. I certainly believe in it, and it was probably one of the most uplifting videos I've seen recently on social media.
So good. So good. I'll have to look it up. What about you, Faith?
I'm reading Mrs. Dalloway. I'm tackling Virginia Woolf. That great icon, bit of a feminist icon, and Mrs. Dalloway. And I'm immersing myself. I'm reading the book, but I'm also watching all the study guides on YouTube for students who study Mrs. Dalloway. It's a wonderful book. It's one of the first modernist books written in, I think, 23 or 24. But Virginia Woolf, and there's a play called Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? I'm no longer afraid of Virginia Woolf, Jess, but I finish it soon. Well, could you like Virginia Woolf or something like that, or no? Okay. You like action?
I'm an escapist when it comes to reading and movies. I like a good romance. I like to disappear into it. I like fantasy. I watch the news and then I try and turn off my mind.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm sorry if I interrupted you so many times, but
It's all right. Have I converted you at all, Pip?
I think that is a win.
I'll take that as I have achieved something today. I go home every day after I do Waste 101 with people and they go, I didn't buy that.
But I hope you've enjoyed the.
I have. I have. Thank you. I have indeed.
Our ramblings. Thanks, Maree.
Thanks for listening. If you would like to hear more of our podcast, hit the follow button on Spotify, or the like button on SoundCloud, or the subscribe button in Apple Podcasts. Please also visit our Instagram page, LinkedIn, or website for behind-the-scenes footage of our podcasts, and to get the latest on upcoming or recently released episodes. If you have any suggestions or feedback, please get in touch via our social media channels or by emailing planningxchange@gmail.com.